It's Politics Tonight, everyone. Welcome to the program. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Inspector General of Police earlier today held an emergency security meeting with heads of paramilitary agencies ahead of the planned exercise. Tonight, our focus is on the planned nationwide protest, and I will be speaking with Samaila Musa, as a national coordinator, Northern Youth Frontiers, and a member of Executive Coalition of Northern Groups, CNG. Welcome to the program, everyone. Stay with us. I'll be right back. Pleasure about the hardship in the country. Nigerians are still largely divided over the choice of demonstration to register their displeasure with the government. The IGP had on Friday ordered all groups planning to take part in the protest to provide certain information to the police command closest to them to forestall breakdown of law and order, as well as destruction of critical national infrastructure and looting of private businesses. Today, the IGP, Kayode Egbetokun, held another constructive virtual meeting with Femi Falano, SAN, Ebolu Adegorua, SAN, and other key members of the Take It Back movement in light of the planned nationwide protest as part of efforts of the Nigerian police to ensure the safety and security of all citizens while upholding the constitutional right to peaceful assembly. You would recall that the Inspector General of Police on Monday sent an invitation to Mr. Adegborua, representing the Take It Back movement, to discuss modalities of the protest and to provide adequate security for the participants. Joining me tonight for his own perspective on the impending nationwide protest is Samaila Musa, is a national coordinator, Northern Youth Frontiers, member of Executive Coalition of Northern Groups. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on Politics Tonight. Welcome to the program. Mr. Musa, can you hear me?
Good evening. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So, at the moment, there are multiple voices speaking up against this protest, including the civil society organizations, traditional rulers, political leaders, religious leaders. Meetings upon meetings have been going on. Do you think this protest should happen? And do you think this is the right time for a fragile peace in the country to be disrupted?
Okay, so I think in our view and our opinion, and this is to state our position expressly, that we know that Nigerians have the right, constitutional right, to protest, to show their displeasure over whatever they feel or they think is not right with the government that they put in place. But from our end, we have assessed the situation, and we know that the country is actually at a stage right now, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, which is sadly bedeviled by insecurity over time for a very long time now. That has been the major challenge from that part of the country. We do not feel, or we do not see how protesting, that is a mass protest, how that is going to help our situation in any case. But it might further, aggravate and further impoverish the people of that region, especially some of the most volatile states and some of the most ravaged by bandits, who were still trying to solve that issue, now having bandits, having some kind of mass protest that will be going on simultaneously all over the country. So if eventually it spirals out of hand, we don't even know where the security agencies are going to call for more hands, because it's simultaneous. So virtually every state, the little policing that is actually left of them will also be trying to combat crimes. So really for us, we do not see how that is going to solve our problem. And we're not saying people don't have the right to come out, but we're saying there's a possibility that it's going to be hijacked by some criminal elements, and eventually it will not go well for our region. So that's why we vehemently saying that, look, people should apply some caution and know that, yes, we know things are quite difficult. There's hunger, especially in the north. There's unemployment. There's all sorts that is actually making youth to be angry at the system. Yes, they have the right to pour out their displeasure, but from our assessment, we feel this whole thing has already generated enough publicity that whoever that needs to know or needs to hear the cry of the youth or their voices have already heard. It has sent a lot of jitters around the leadership already, and everybody has been on top of the situation. So I think perhaps dialogue would be the next phase instead of some kind of protest that we don't know how it's going to turn out.
Absolutely, because the major concern is the security of lives and property. But major stakeholders have also said no governor has said he didn't receive truckloads of food from federal government to share among the vulnerable people. Students have started enjoying loans for their school fees and pocket money. And every well-meaning Nigerian believes this is massive relief for parents. Additional infrastructure funds sent to state governments by federal government. Ways and means cleared. Revenue to loan ratio moved from 98% to 63%. External reserve surges. Minimum wage signed into law. Debt incurred to foreign airlines settled. And just recently, just yesterday, Dangote Refinery will get crude oil in Naira. Many superhighways are on the way across the country. All these initiatives and projects were kicked off under a year. For you, does the Tinubu government deserve the patience it is asking of Nigerians?
Yeah, so to be honest, I think it deserves, you know, the some kind of leverage. It deserves to be actually be excused. The only thing that I have against the Tinubu government would be that I expect them to actually voice out more as to what they met on ground. I mean, the situation was quite very bad when the government was coming on board, so one will expect that they come out to say, look, this is what is on ground. Well, perhaps they are overlooking so many things, but, well, the buck stops on the president's table. So I think at this time, it should be that the government is talking more about what they're doing, and the governors also need to be involved, because quite a lot of them have not been saying nothing, and that further aggravates, you know, the situation. So for some of the states, there's so much build-up, tension has actually built up because no one is actually addressing the youths. You know, so some of the governors also need to come down from their high horses and look for means of addressing the youth beyond just issuing press statements. There's a need to really find ways to. I've watched some videos of some governors going to some squares in their state's capital or thereabouts, you know, and just talking to youth. I think that would go a long way, because the interests of your state should come first, and there's a need to pacify the people such that, you know, the anger really does not go out of hand. So really, I think the presidency deserves to be given an excuse. Sometimes, because there's so much hardship, people are expecting a miracle. So also, I call on the government to look for means of alleviating the suffering of the people. I think that will go a long way. But yes, they deserve to be excused. It's just I mean, there's a 4-year tenure. We're just in the first year, so really there's a need for people to quite excuse them that, okay, let's watch what's going on, and the government also should be able to communicate further on what are their plans.
I mean, earlier you said this present government should have voiced out more about about what they met on ground. But did you think that happened because the outgoing or the outgone or the gone administration was also of the APC?
Well, that's supposedly the case, or I will assume that actually was what happened. But I think, I mean, there's a need, because even if you look at the outgoing government, it wasn't the president that actually committed a lot of those criminal things that happened then. Just people, so there should be some scapegoats, you know, from even the previous government to say, just beyond Emefiele, there are some other names that we expect to actually also be picked. because he wasn't alone in that business. So really, there's so many of them still roaming the streets. I would urge the government to also look into that. I mean, let some monies be returned, you know what I mean, just to cushion the economy. That's what our own demands.
All right. So at the moment, a particular issue is trending on social media. I'd like you to speak to that. The list of locations are out for a particular group, and that's hashtag Take It Back movement. Yeah, that's detailed in the letter from Ebolu Adegorua, who is the legal representative for the organizers, and that letter was addressed to the IGP. So from the reports, the venues are Abuja, Lagos, Benin City, Bauchi, Ibadan. But some are raising concerns that there are no venues in the southeast and northwest. And many Nigerians are wondering if people are not hungry in the southeast and core northern parts of the country. I mean, if there is no bad governance in the states not included, does this bother you as well?
Oh, it doesn't bother me a bit. The point is, well, we are of the opinion that if actually the motive behind organizing a protest is actually to make your voice to be heard, just the awareness that there's going to be some protests have sent a lot of messages and have actually achieved what a mass protest will achieve, because the government is now aware of what the problems are, if they don't know before. So, and people are showing their concerns, because quite a lot of governors too will tell you that, well, they might not be able to contain the situation. And that's why some of the commissioners of police are also voicing out to say, look, I don't think we have adequate manpower. It's a different thing when you just have pockets of people trying to come out. So we need to dissuade people from coming out in mass, because I've also spoken to quite a number of people down north who are traders who have their fears that their goods might eventually be carted away. They're not sure whether the markets are going to be spared. They're not sure whether their goods are not going to be stolen. So really, there are concerns out there, and that's why there's a need for continuous reorientation and recalibration of our people going on, that says, look, if some of these things we allow it to happen, we're going to pay for it. If you go out there to vandalize, let's say, for example, the government house, it's still our money that is going to be used to rebuild it. Go ahead, please.
Talking about dissuading the people from coming out, do you think the president's addressing the nation will do the magic?
If the president should address the nation, is that what you mean?
Absolutely. Do you think the president should address the nation?
Yeah. I've been calling for that. We have been calling for that. There's a need for him to address the nation. And perhaps, there's one thing about leadership. Yeah, it shows when the president came in, I know there were a lot of hopes, because he came in with some kind of robust team that everybody feels, okay, a lot of things are going to change. Perhaps there are some missteps that needs to be retraced and all that, but the address is quite very important. It motivates us, it inspires the youth of this country that, well, perhaps there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel, that this phase is going to pass away. This is the sacrifice we need to make in order for us to get to where we're going. So if some of these things are addressed by the president, it shows some reassurance, it inspires a lot of people to say, well, I think we are on the right track to actually coming out of this whole mess that we find ourselves in this country. So it's quite very important to do that.
Absolutely. So before we look at the demands, major stakeholders say, for over the years, we've been living a fake life, and the president is just about fixing the root causes of some of our deep-rooted challenges as a nation. But since this conversation started, it looks like Nigerians are no longer believers of long-term measures. And many say food inflation, which is the elephant in the room, is the only metric that affects 99% of the Nigerian populace directly. But for you, what short-term measures can reduce food price hike? Or is it really a hard nut to crack?
I think there should be some subsidies in that regard. Food items should be subsidized. And beyond subsidizing it, there should be some market regulation, because you see, one of the major problems we have in Nigeria is even we, the masses or the citizenry, we are our own enemies. When something goes up, and perhaps you know, just for example, when anytime there's fuel scarcity and transporters jack the price they take for some transportation from point A to B, by the time the scarcity goes away, they're not reversing how much they're taking anymore. So these are some of the problems. The markets, if the if this, the government try to subsidize, there should be regulation. Otherwise, some people will still want to sell with not the same amount with when the price was actually high. So yeah, I think that will go a long way in actually bringing about some kind of reduction in this hike of food items. And more so, I think the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, I've seen some of the laudable projects that have been launched in that ministry. Perhaps maybe it just needs a little time for them to come into fruition before we started getting the benefits. But I think some of this will be the right steps in the right direction. Yes.
I guess you're talking about price control, but experts have said this is very unrealistic and will never work. So what gives you the impression that this will work at this time?
So how else do we achieve what we want to achieve? There is hardship at this time, and people don't want to bring down the price when government have subsidized the same item they claiming is expensive. There should be some action taken. I know some traditional rulers have actually put some sanctions in their own place. I saw in the news the other day, the Oni of Ife actually made some pronouncement that the markets in that place, there's going to be some price regulation. So really, at this time, these are some of the things we need to do to really, until perhaps we got some, we get ourselves into some stability and we perhaps sail above board. It can be taken off. But if government is trying to do anything in terms of bringing about some subsidy in terms of the price of food items, and the marketers refuse to reduce it, should they be left alone? Because it means they are actually making double profit. So there should be some sanctions, actually. Even if it's not price control, let there be some sanctions to say that, yes, that we have subsidized, it must go for the same, the effects of that subsidy must reflect in what you're selling in the market.
All right. So let's quickly examine the 15 charter of demands outlined by the organizers of the protests. The APC has said most of these issues are not matters of protest because they border on the issues of politics and amendments to the Constitution. But one of the demands is toss the Senate arm of the Nigerian legislative system, keep the House of Representatives, and make lawmaking a part-time endeavor. And this demand is not new. I'm sure you're aware of that. And as such, stakeholders are termed it realistic because the funds that go into keeping both chambers with practically the same legislative duties takes a toll on the country. What's your reaction to this particular demand?
So I think the essence of that demand is that there should be the government should cut cost of governance, which is adjudged to be very expensive. So that's some of the things that actually prompted that. But by and large, I think it's not just the National Assembly or it's not just the Senate. There are some other places that government need to put more effort in trying to see that they reduce the cost of governance. So those people who are making those demands are actually, for me, it's actually like a tall order. We need some immediate cushioning of the economy or alleviating the suffering of the people. That demand they are making is something that has to go through the constitutional amendments and all of that. That might take really a very, very long time, But first and foremost, there's a need to actually bail people out of hunger. So we should be talking, that should be tops right now. And I'm sure the presidency is aware of that and perhaps doing everything they can to actually solve that issue.
All right, so some other demands are end banditry, terrorism and violent crimes, reforms of security agencies to stop continuous human rights violations and duplications of security agencies, and enhance the physical security of Nigerian citizens. Another one is invest heavily in education, give Nigerian students grants, not loans, aggressively pursue free and compulsory education for children across Nigeria. But I remember that strengthening the education sector was part of the president's campaign promises. And I mean, just recently he approved the establishment of national education data for an extensive census of schools in Nigeria from primary to tertiary level, their conditions and living facilities, proximity to one another, and also educational infrastructure, among other data points. So the work has really started. But I want you to speak to a part of that demand, asking for grants and not loans. With over 60,000 applicants as we speak, and government says it has made provision for 2 million students. Do you think, is it a bad idea when it comes to, the student loan scheme?
Well, I don't know how they actually arrive at that. But you see, it's just talking the same thing, just going round and round, dancing around it and all that. The point is, one of the reasons why you want to call for either student loan or grant is because you feel there's so many people who might not be able to afford the cost of education. So what is the reasons why they can't afford it? Because either their parents cannot afford it, they don't have the means of livelihood. We're talking the same thing. It boils down to the issue of unemployment. It boils down to the issue of poverty. So because if all these are taken out of it, yes.
Did you get my question?
Please reframe it so that again.
At the moment,
I suppose I do, but if you can reframe it, yes.
Okay, so at the moment, the student loan scheme is on, but the protesters are demanding. They say they do not want loans; they want grants. So I'm asking you: is the student loan scheme a bad idea?
Well, it's not a bad idea. It's not. I'm just saying. I'm answering your question. Perhaps you didn't get me. Earlier, is that what I'm saying is the problem is still boiling down to those two issues I said. Because if everyone is okay, like the economy is actually working and doing well, a lot of people don't bother about whether there's any student loan anywhere because they can afford it, because their parents can afford it. But in the absence of that, because quite a lot of families are struggling, and that is the reason why I'm sure the government is actually introducing the student loan scheme. And I'm saying even the people who are calling for the grant instead of the loan, it's still the same issues of the economy. If the economy is fixed, I'm sure quite a lot of people don't even care whether there's any loan anywhere or any grants anywhere, because virtually a lot of people can afford it. So perhaps the talk about grant or loan will be quite minimal because quite a lot of people can actually afford it. Prices are going high and all of that, cost of education.
Mr. Musa, pardon me for interjecting. We're wrapping up gradually. But do you think there is so much pressure on the center because state governors are not doing enough?
Well, I wouldn't say outrightly that state governors are not doing enough. I can tell you there are some states that honestly are really struggling because the internally generated revenue is actually nothing to write home about, because these are very small states. There are states in this country that can actually stand on their own without getting anything from the center. It can still be run. The president did it when he was governor at a point. So there are states that are quite very rich, that have the resources to actually manage whatever or run projects in their states. But some of the states, places like Zamfara, these are small states that really the IGR is actually something that you are actually saying, oh wow, how are they managing it to still be able to achieve some of these laudable projects that are ongoing. So really, there's a lot of pressure, I know, at the center, because whenever anything goes wrong, the leadership or the president is being responsible. But there's a need also for some reorientation to say that, look, what are the responsibilities of a sitting governor in a state? So that we begin to, separate them instead of modeling everything up to say it must go to the center. The center is the one responsible for, not building the schools that ordinarily a governor should build in the states. The center is responsible for when a governor decides to steal the funds in his states. So the people should also be able to be knowledgeable enough to know that you need to call your governors to account for how they run in the states. Yes.
All right. Well, I guess we can end this conversation that way. And of course, conversations are on, and we'll continue to monitor developments ahead of August 1st. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I've been speaking with Samaila Musa, National Coordinator, Northern Youth Frontiers, and member of Executive Coalition of Northern Groups. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke WO using the hashtag Politics Tonight. But also on YouTube at youtube.com/